Hey everyone, this is Sean Cargill from Violent Gamer, and this is a video review of Krater for PC. It is a post-apocalyptic action RPG that is squad-based, and it has a fairly lengthy story. It is currently only single player, but they're planning to do multiplayer in the future. It has open world with an open difficulty, 4 different classes, and a different kind of leveling system that I haven't really seen in any other game up to this point. The game is developed by Fat Shark, which you may know for Lead and Gold or Hamilton's Great Adventure. And on those 2 previous games, people were really worried about their support for this game because they didn't really have good support on Lead and Gold. But they have done continuous updates for Krater, and I wanted to wait a little while after it was released before doing a review because there's so many reviews of the game at release, and they've done so many updates since then. Krater has been out for a little more than a month now, and they have done many updates for the game and fixed a lot of the problems people had with it. Like for instance, you continually can keep your characters now, while before they were kind of expendable and you had no sense of attachment to them because you always had to replace them as you got higher level throughout the game. And in Krater you have 4 classes. You have a Bruiser, Regulator, Slayer, and Medicus, and the Slayer is entirely melee and he's all about damage, while the Bruiser is pretty much your tank, and then the Regulator is ranged and he has abilities that affect enemies, like slowing them down or stunning them, while the Medicus is obviously a medic. You start with characters that start at rank 1, which is basically level 1, and you get experience like normal throughout the game by doing quests and going out into the open world and fighting enemies, and there's random encounters on the world map which are great, but I'll get into that later. Instead of your characters leveling up and getting new ability points and strength or stamina and all that, you have to make them stronger with implants and gadgets and upgrades. So it's a different system than you would normally see, because leveling them up, just leveling up doesn't really do anything. You have to put those gadgets and implants in there, and all leveling does is open up more slots for you to put those gadgets and implants, because at the beginning you start with like 1 or 2 slots by the time you get to level 2, and the max is level 15, and that opens up everything. Except even once you're level 15, there are still higher levels of gadgets that you can put in there, so even though you essentially stop leveling, you still continually improve your characters throughout the game with gadgets and implants. That whole system works pretty well, and you can make it so you can keep your characters and pay money to level them up to the next rank, because they start out only being able to go up to rank 5, and then only rank 10, and then rank 15. So you can keep your same characters the whole time, it just costs money, because you can take them to boot camp, and boot camp costs a bit of money. The story in Krater is rather interesting. It's not bad, but it's not nearly as interesting as something like Fallout that's also post-apocalyptic. There's a lot of characters in the world and they all seem to have their own personalities, but at the same time they're kind of stagnant, and the cities feel stagnant. There's not people moving around. There are people around the cities, and the cities look visually impressive, but there just isn't that big attraction that wants you to keep finding new places and talking to new characters to find exciting things about the world. The story is fine the way it is, it's just not great. And the open world works really well, and it's really big, and it reminds me of Baldur's Gate and older games like that that are fantastic. And I love that right off the bat you can go down to the left on the world map and get absolutely slaughtered by huge high level enemies, and the world is open like that, and the difficulty is open. Each place you go into tells you the difficulty, and you can essentially judge on that, but even then you kind of have to get used to each rank and see how your guys fare against enemies of that rank. And they're all different. There are different classes just like your classes, and they essentially seem to use the same classes that you have, except they don't have the same abilities. And combat feels pretty good, and each class has 4 different skills depending on their rank. You can get different characters that have different skills, but they each only have 2 per character. And in that way, it's pretty limited, and you get used to their skills really fast. And the game also suffers from not having a pause ability, which isn't a big deal in the beginning, but later on when you're trying to heal and stun people at the same time, and then make one of your other guys, your bruiser, jump and get threat level from other enemies, then it's kind of a pain that you do not have the pause option. Graphic-wise, Krater is very pleasing. The world map is rather impressive just to look at and go around, which you see right here. It may not be impressive for a game that would be like $60 made by a huge team, but this is a game that's $15 made by a small team, and they did a good job with it. And each environment looks pretty good, but the level designs are pretty static, meaning there aren't that many different types of areas. So you get used to that, and then it's not so exciting anymore each time you go to a new area, because you hit a lot of the same areas. Each dungeon is randomly designed, each floor. It's randomly generated. But since there are only a few types, they don't feel like they have a lot of personality. So everything does look pretty good, animations are pretty good, the combat animations are exciting. It's just not fantastic because of the limited scope of everything. Krater is a fairly long game, and there is a lot to do. Like I said before, you can upgrade all your characters. There's tons of different upgradables to find, whether it's gadgets or implants or crafting recipes, which I haven't mentioned at all. There's a whole crafting system, which isn't that unique, but it works fine, and there's nothing wrong with it. And there is a deep cave at the end of the game that is really long, and it is really tough to beat. And it's kind of like a bonus cave for people to mess with that have essentially beat the game. And the world is pretty big. It took about 10 hours to cover half of it, but that's not going through every area in half of it. That's just uncovering half of it. So, in the end, Krater is a pretty good game. It's not a great game. It has a lot of good things going for it. And if you like action RPGs with the squad-based element to it, you'll like it. Especially if you want multiplayer, because in the future there's multiplayer coming, which they'll be adding to it. And they keep updating it at a regular basis as well and continually making the game better. So for $15 you could do a lot worse. Thanks for watching, and if you want to find out more on Krater, like where to buy it, just check out the info of the video. Thanks.